Hey guys, I'm Marshall. I'm the owner of Going Gear, and this is Don, or as many of you know him, Such, YouTube superhero superstar. This is Going Bag Day. So we've done this. This is our third year now. And the reason this started is a few years ago we had the snowpocalypse where, you know, Georgia got, what do we get, like 3 inches of snow or something like that? But it basically covered the whole city in ice. People were stranded on the roads. I knew a ton of people that were walking home in dress shoes and dress shirts, not really dressed appropriately. So we thought we'd have an event to kind of teach people and help people prepare for that kind of stuff. You know, not necessarily end of the world, more along the lines of stuff that can and does happen on a occasional basis. So the first year we talked about a go bag or a going bag. Kind of a larger bag that you can throw in your truck or carry around with you. And then we went to something a little bit more compact. So we went to more of a compact kit that you could throw in your backpack, more for urban kind of stuff. And this year, we've had a lot of requests to talk about even more compact kits. So this one is my outdoor kit. So this is the one that I can throw in any bag, any outdoor trip, and it has all the tools I need, first aid, fire starting, all kinds of stuff. So this is what we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about the 10 essentials, which a lot of you probably heard about, and how it relates to that. Before we get started, I wanted to give a big thanks to all the vendors that very generously donated a bunch of stuff for giveaways, a bunch of goodie bags for those of you watching. We had 100 goodie bags for the first 100 people that showed up, and we got some really cool stuff. I mean, Southern Grind gave us a bunch of these little survival kits that have hooks and saws and arrowheads and all kinds of little fun things on that. Kershaw gave us 100 knives and tools. Olight actually custom engraved a bunch of Olight i3Es. And then we had Chacos, CRKT, Osprey gave us some stuff, Light My Fire, a bunch of really nice vendors. I said Kershaw?
Did you? I was just pointing at it. I don't know what you're talking about.
The other Kershaw thing that they gave us. And we also got some really nice stuff for giveaways. So we got giveaways from Olight. They gave us some flashlights. Zero Tolerance gave us a few knives. Kershaw gave us a couple knives. Southern Grind gave us even more stuff. They gave us some knives and t-shirts and stuff. Arc'teryx gave us some bags. So we got some Salomon, some bags, Osprey bags, 511 bag, Rite in the Rain, and Light My Fire. So big thanks to them. Yeah. It's really nice, it's really generous of the vendors to do that. So we like that, and we want to encourage it. So big thanks to them. So do you have any opening words that you want to you want to chime in on anything?
About the vendors?
Yeah. No, I don't know.
Well, I know you said that the bags though ran out before the group, even the people that were in line got in. So if you didn't get a bag, which chances are, you know, it's you get to see here what everybody got. So next year you'll be here earlier.
That's right. It keeps on getting earlier and earlier every year. I think the first year we ran out at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then last year we ran out around 10:30, and this year we didn't even have enough for the people in line. So next year it's gonna
be a riot.
Maybe we'll try to do 200 bags next year. We'll see what we can do. But anyway, so a lot of this is going to be based on the 10 essentials. So if you're not familiar with the 10 essentials, it's something that the group, the Mountaineers, came up with back in the 1930s, talking about the 10 things that everybody should have on them on any outdoor adventure. So not just handling emergency stuff, but handling the stuff that you do when you're hiking. So food and water. Actually, I had the classic list right here. So it was map, compass, sunglasses and sunscreen, extra clothing, headlamp, flashlight, first aid supplies, fire starter, matches, knife, and extra food. So the idea was that you have those basics with you, and you can handle pretty much anything in the outdoors. You know, some of it may be more difficult. You know, if you only have some basic stuff, you may not be super comfortable. If you have, you know, little energy bars, you may not be super well fed. But in general, you can handle pretty much anything with those basics. And relatively recently, they revised it to systems instead of that. So instead of saying matches, they say fire starting. And instead of saying bring a map and bring a compass, they say bring navigation. So the new 10 essentials are navigation, sun protection, insulation, illumination, first aid supplies, fire, repair kit and tools, nutrition, hydration, and emergency shelter. Now, a lot of those things that we have on there aren't really something that you're going to put in a kit. So especially clothing and water and food. And I know I'm going to go ahead and get this out of the way because everybody complains in the comments. I'm sorry about the door. That is our door chime. we will oil it maybe next year, probably not. But I'm going to go and get that out of the way. But anyway, the idea of this kit is the stuff that covers the 10 essentials and a couple other things that is applicable to every trip. So you can take this on a summer trip, you can take it on a winter trip, you can take it on a short hike, you can take it on a backpacking trip, and this applies to all of that. That's the thinking around my kit anyway. And then the other 10 essentials, the rest of them, you can tailor to your trip. So maybe you need some more advanced first aid supplies if you have people with medical conditions going with you, or obviously you want different clothing for the summer versus the winter, and water treatment and water itself and food. And shelter as well. So shelter is a big thing that's going to be tailored to your trip. On a day hike, you're probably not going to take a tent, and you probably are going to take a tent on a backpacking trip. So that's the thinking around my kit. You wanna tell what you do?
Yes. Marshall asked me actually if we wanted to kind of work together on the one kit that he did, and I told him, I said I think it would be very important for us to see two different perspectives. And so my kit, though, is a little bit different, even though obviously I agree with the list, is my kits are based on the rule of threes. And if you've watched my videos, you know I'm big on this, but you need to keep, reinforcing it. And so now if I can get through it, of course, I've said it so many times, but, really 3 seconds without hope. And I think that's one of the things that a kit like this does, is if you're in a situation, you go, okay, I got that kit back there. And so that's number one. Number two is 3 minutes without air, or at least being able something, to protect your breathing, and 3 hours in harsh conditions. 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. And it's good to prioritize that, because what happens is a lot of people go, oh, I gotta have my food. Well, you've honestly, it's good to have a little bit to keep your energy up, but really you got 3 weeks, so back up. Just kind of, okay, what are the real most important things? Now, some things that fall outside of that are medical. Obviously, that could happen at any time. Defense, some kind of self-defense situation. Communications, which we rely on our cell phones so much, and honestly, that is probably the best communication that you can use in a average situation. But what if your phone goes down? And we're not really going to get into that, but that is something I'd like for you guys to consider. I know some of us guys were talking about that a little bit earlier. But so we've got kind of two different philosophies. Mine is a little bit more toward an urban type situation, or suburban, and Marshall's is more of a
you like the Game of Thrones theme?
I like that. Marshall's is more toward bushcraft, not necessarily bushcraft, but more outdoors camping, which both apply. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say on the opening. But those rule of threes to me are really easy to remember, and I do every one of my kits with that in mind. I just keep that in mind.
We talk about kits and we talk about the gear. Obviously, we're very focused on gear here at Going Gear. And something we don't really talk about a lot, and this is something I've been thinking about lately, is ourselves and our personal fitness and our health, and how important things like that and how important morale are. Whenever I do these classes, I tend to stay up pretty late, and I'm always sleep deprived. And it's always fresh on my mind, like, how much things like that can affect you. So make sure, in addition to having your right gear and having your kit and all that, you're taking care of yourself, your fitness and your health and your sleep and all that. Not to get too new age. I know it's a little hippie for the kind of stuff we normally talk about. But so let's get into the kit. So mine is based around GearPods. And I really like the GearPods because they're modular. So we're talking about trips, and we're talking about longer trips. And if I wanted to add on more first aid or more fire kits or anything like that, this is my basic kit. This is what I take on every hike. I take it on every backpacking trip. Weighs a little over a pound. It's reasonably compact and lightweight, and it has all my basic tools. But if I want something a little bit more expanded, I really like them because you can add on pods to this. So they make connectors, and you can add on more storage. So mine's kind of based around that. I know a lot of people like to use survival tins. They're nice because you can cook food in them, you can boil water and stuff like that in them. But I like the modular ability of the GearPods. I like to wrap duct tape around them, and you can also access it from both ends. So I kind of have a bunch of stuff crammed in there, even more than normal for this class. And it's nice because you can open up both ends and have your stuff dump out, but easily get into the stuff from both sides.
He also likes Legos, by the way.
I do. I love Legos. Anybody that knows me will attest to that. I got my kids as an excuse now, though. So when I go buy them, I'm like, these are for my kids. So mine's based around a GearPods. It looks like, what are you using there, Don?
This is one of the Maxpedition. This is the skinny organizer, and it's just real rugged and tough. One of the things I do like about the GearPod, which I do have a survival kit in one of the GearPods, and I had dumped it out to do some other projects, and so this morning when I got up, I was like, ah! So I do like this system because it's waterproof, really, is one of the big things. But mine is just a laid out kit like this, and one of the things, there are some extra things in here that I'm using that, like this battery charger, or, you know, that's, and then some other little, just odds and ends, some, I know what's in here. I don't know why I'm having a hard time. But really, by the rule of threes is what I use through this. And of course, with the water filtration, and guys, water is super important. You can live 3 days without water. You can function for around 3 days without water. Once it stops and you start getting dehydrated, physical and medical situations start to occur. It is really important. And good drinking water, if you don't have some kind of filter system, just because there's water out there doesn't mean it's good, it's pure. We have a beautiful stream that runs behind our house and has this waterfall, and it looks great. But the other day I was doing some videoing, and I took this bucket and pulled it up, and you know, I'm like, whoa, I would not drink that. So, you know, don't think just because it looks nice and clean that you can't get sick. And the last thing you want to do is in a critical situation, be sick. You know, you just don't want to do that. So water is super important.
Always treat your water. You never know what's in there. You never know what animal is pooping in the water upstream. Farm runoff. You never know what somebody else has done in the water before you. Really important. I know Les Stroud, the guy that's on the Survivor Man show, and he's been on a bunch of other stuff. I think he had Giardia. I want to say he had Giardia. Yeah. And it basically knocked him out for like 6 months. I mean, he had gastrointestinal, like serious stuff for like 6 months. It's not fun stuff. And imagine when you're outside and you know you don't have access to medical care. That's
high stress.
Yeah, that's not a good situation to be in. So I agree. Water is very important. Some sort of water treatment. I actually take a couple. You have a filter. I have one of the little survival straws in mine. So the Frontier emergency water filter, and you know, you stick that in the water and you drink out of it. And then I also have some Catadine MicroPure tablets. So I have a couple different ways to do it.
I like the filter straw, by the way, and it's really compact.
It's really compact and it's light, weighs like an ounce. Because size and weight are important with these kind of kits. So yeah, water is very important. I actually have a water bag too. So a water bag just so you can transport and store water. You know, having the filter straw is great and all, and it's nice to be able to get the water, but you want to be able to take it places also. So normally, I didn't talk about this before, but we kind of mentioned what we had done in the past. A lot of the stuff that I have, I also keep larger versions of. So I have the emergency water filter in there. I have the tablets. If I'm going on anything longer than like a couple mile hike, I take a water filter with me. Because there's a lot of things like that that can save you size and weight. You know, MSR has the Hyperflow water filter, which is a really nice water filter that can filter really quickly, but it also weighs a lot less than water itself. So it weighs like 7 ounces versus about 2 pounds per liter of water. So there's a lot of these things that you can carry that can get your weight down. So a lot of the things that I have in here, I usually have larger versions of as well. Again, tailored to the trip. The kit is, if I really have to have something, it's in here. So emergency stuff and also basic tools.
Well, two is one and one is none.
That's right.
And that really redundancy really helps. One thing that's really important though is, again, the 3 hours in harsh conditions, whether it's hot or cold, but especially if it's hot, having a way to start fire and having a fire kit, whether it's just a regular Bic lighter, which I'll tell you what, is this against fire marshal rules if I do that?
Nope.
if you have just some Bic lighters are great to have. In fact, anytime I'm somewhere where there are Bic lighters, I'll just grab a couple and have a little box I put them in. But even more is, let me see if I usually keep fire steels in most of my kits, and but just various ways to start fires. And fire is a very important tool. It can cook, you can stay warm, it gives you a little bit more morale in a bad situation, and can provide light as well. But with that, with the shelter part, even having emergency space blanket or like this emergency space bivvy, and it's just something really handy to be able to keep. And if you're in a medical situation where your body goes into shock, this is great to have as well, especially if you have friends. So, that can be a little bit more of a shelter.
I'm totally with you on the fire starting. I go back to the morale thing because starting fires is fun. I mean, we like to burn stuff. It's just a natural part of, yeah, there you go. I like to burn stuff. I like flashlights, I like knives, I like fire. And just for the morale component of it, forget about the warmth and the heat. Well, don't forget about those because those are important too. But in addition to those, it's fun to sit around a campfire, doing it responsibly, of course.
How do you do that irresponsibly?
A fire irresponsibly? Ask Canada.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was probably super inappropriate. I don't know if that was an accidental fire or not, but when they're in a really bad condition up there, and can you imagine being the guy that started something like that? I mean, it's a terrible situation. There's a lot of people in trouble that are trapped, and there's pictures of people driving down the highway with fire on both sides, and it's a serious thing. And you read all these stories about the fires out west that are started by a guy flicking a cigarette out the window. I mean, don't be that guy. Please don't be that guy. You use fire, use it responsibly, use existing fire rings, clear the area. Yeah. Be responsible.
Thanks.
Yeah.
But that leads also to a survival situation. Those people having to leave their homes while they're being burned behind them, having something you can grab and go can make a huge difference. So, I tell people all the time, I get messages all the time from people actually physically using the stuff we talk about in real world situations. And, just because it doesn't happen today, it happened last week, it didn't happen 10 years ago. It only has to happen once in your lifetime, once, to make it worth it. So, and that's why you guys are here. So, but for you guys on video that don't do what we tell you, take that into consideration.
Can you grab a survival medic for me? The AMK survival medic. So for fire, the other kind of stuff, Don talks about what he carries. I carry one of our New Myth lighters, little watertight lighter. I carry matches. I have a fire steel in there. And also really important is some tinder or some fire starters. I find these really useful. It's nice to be able to start a fire with the materials that you have out there, but especially here in Georgia, the survival medic. The orange one. It's also really important to be able to start fires when you're in conditions where there's a lot of moisture, where it's constantly raining like it is here in Georgia. So I take a couple of fire starters as well. I really like the wax and sawdust ones, like the tinder sticks. Thanks. I just had Michael grab one of these for me. So, we're talking about building your own kits. We're talking about building your own bags. And I talk about this kit every class, and I'll continue talking about this kit every class because it's a great kit. It's 15 bucks. It has a bunch of different stuff in it. You've got fire starting, you've got tinder, emergency blanket, a whistle for signaling, you've got duct tape, you've got some basic first aid stuff and repair stuff in there. And if you're getting something for your buddy or getting something for your loved one, or if you want something cheap and simple to grab and throw in your glove box or in your backpack, AMK Survival Medic is something that's really good for that. I recommended it in the past, and I'm going to keep on recommending it because it's a good little kit. But anyway, yeah, having a way to start a fire. I really like the wax and sawdust ones, and I also really like the AMK Tinder Quicks. So they're a cloth material, and the really nice thing about them is I've got them in this little bag, but they're compressible cloth. So you have your survival kit or you have your bag, you can shove these anywhere. You can always find a little nook and cranny to stuff a few more of these in, and these will burn for a few minutes. So you've got a few minutes of fire, And if you're, if you can start a fire relatively easily, then a few minutes is usually enough to get you going.
Now, one thing that I like is Vaseline and cotton balls. I mean, this stuff burns like crazy, and it's really easy to make. So you can kind of tuck this away. Some of these have been formulated, and the technology now that's gotten to make these very efficient, there's nothing, I mean, this is a really good product. So, but this is also just a very basic thing that you can do. And
something
really
you can do
easy.
at home.
Right.
Most of us have petroleum jelly and cotton balls at home, so.
Right. Just be ready for your hands to smell like Vaseline.
That's right.
And but
that's why I like these.
Well, what I like to do is take a Ziploc bag, turn it inside out, reach down in it, and pull out the Vaseline, and then drop the cotton balls down in it, zip it up, and then just work it, and it'll keep it still get on your hands a little bit, but it will help.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is navigation. If you're going into the woods, you're going on a backpacking trip, I personally think it's super important to have a map of the area. I mean, most of us have smartphones. A lot of us have GPS programs on there. Like I have one called Backcountry Navigator on mine. That's really, really nice. It uses USGA maps. USGS? Whatever the official map guides are, it uses those maps. And it's really nice. But phones die. Sometimes you can't get a signal. So basic compass and map reading skills are essential. And I keep just a compact compass in there. If I'm going on a backpacking trip or somewhere where it's not just a quick little day hike, I take a more full-featured navigation compass and a topographic map as well.
And here's just one of the Rand McNally's. It's a pretty large map, but this is just the eastern United States. And we get so hooked into our GPS. And I know that's one thing. In fact, at the old store where they first started the Going Gear, I had been down 2 or 3 times, and one time I forgot I had a GPS, and this is before smartphones, and I couldn't remember how to get here, not to here, but the other. It took me a while to really figure it out because I was so locked into it, and we've forgotten how to look at maps and read maps. So having a good map, these are not easy to find anymore. I think QT had them back in this back area near the bathrooms at one time. But having at least a local map of your area and things like that is really important. And of course with compasses too as well. And one thing to note about compass is to have 2, because if you're not careful, sometimes people will take a compass if they're in a survival situation and they begin to doubt it. And if you have another one, you can double check it. So just a little side note.
Now there's some stuff on here that I talked about tailoring to your trip. There's some stuff on this that I just have in every single one of my bags. So I don't keep some stuff in my kit because I put it in the front pocket of every one of my bags. And a couple of those things, one is sunscreen, just a nice little thing of sunscreen, because being exposed to the elements can get you in trouble. Being out in the sun, getting sunstroke or anything like that is a world of hurt. So some basic sunscreen, sunglasses, hats, anything to protect you from the elements is really, really important. And something they don't have on here, but something I think is really important, especially here in Georgia, is insect protection.
Yes.
I mean, mosquitoes and ticks and just everything that we have around here. If any of you have ever been to Cumberland Island, the amount of just bugs in general that they have down there is it's astounding. I mean, every trip I go down there, if it's during the warmer months, actually stop going down there during the warmer months, because you're pulling like 10 or 12 ticks out of you a day, let alone all the ones you're constantly flicking off. And protecting yourself from that kind of stuff is really, really important. So I also keep insect protection in every one of my bags. When I get a bag, I throw a few things like that in it just from the get-go. So sun protection was the next thing, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, it definitely, and insect repellent is huge, especially with some of the threats that we have. One of the things kind of go along that line is a good medical kit. This is just a really small little EDC medical kit, but I do keep a number of different kits around, and trauma kits are really important if you're in a vehicle. I know today I was coming down 85, and I was just driving along, all of a sudden the car in front of me just, and I mean, it was funny. It took me a second to think about it, but then I kind of pulled over, and cars behind me, I started getting worried about it. It doesn't take just a second to be in a major collision. So having a trauma kit in your vehicle is just important. Now for me, I'm a shooter. I do a lot of shooting, and I do a lot of knife reviews, which I have cut myself a number of times. In fact, this little SE, that was not a gun. This little SE Azula right here was cut through my pinky to where I still don't have feeling in this hand and this pinky. So, you know.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, I've cut myself a number of times. I do a lot with knives, obviously, review-wise.
The next class is knife safety. Basic knife safety.
But, yeah, I cut it, and that was probably the most scary because I thought I'd actually, as soon as I did, I've taken a 4x4 and cut through it with this Azula. I mean, one of those 4x4s, cut all the way through it, just cutting. So when I cut my finger right there, man, I'll tell you what, I mean, I don't usually get nervous about it, but I really thought, man, I would almost cut my finger off, which I almost did. But having something close by is really important. And especially if you're in an outside situation, especially with infection and things like that can occur, keeping it clean and wrapping it up, and stopping the bleeding.
One thing I really like for that is AMK and Quick Clot. They have a new product that's Quick Clot Gauze. And if you're not familiar with Quick Clot, it's a clotting agent. So it's something that the military uses a lot for severe wounds. So for gunshots and stuff like that, they basically shove this sponge that has, or Celox. Celox is another one. They shove this sponge in the wound and it makes it instantly clot. And that's great and all, but, and that is something that's good to take. Most of our injuries tend not to be on that level, hopefully. I don't know, maybe Don's or on, sounds like his might be on that level.
This is my number one friend right here.
But, Band-Aids. But Quick Clot makes a gauze that's really nice. So it's just a gauze that you can wrap around cuts like that, and it really does work. I actually, I swear it wasn't my fault, but at SHOT Show this year, one of my employees got cut, and I happen to have a sample that I had just been given of that stuff. And we tried it out and it worked. It was really cool stuff. So stuff like that. I also have some first aid things. I have basic bandages. Basic medications are super important. You know, if there's something that your life depends on, take some spares of that. You know, get a little baggie for it, or a little pill fob or something that you can put those kind of medications in. So I have a lot of basic medication stuff, and that's what this extra little pod on here is for. This is all my medications and bandages and stuff like that, and that's something that you really need to tailor to yourself and your level of expertise. And that's something else to talk about. It's good to have all this stuff, and it's good to build these kits, and it's good to talk about this. Know how to use it. Go out and practice with these things. You can have all the fire starters in the world. I have this buddy of mine that he was telling me that he couldn't start a fire with a can of white gas. I was like, first of all, why are you using a white gas instead of like a lighter and some tinder, which I know you had? And he's like, I wanted to get it started right away. So just because you have the stuff doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to immediately be able to use it. So go give it a try. Go in your backyard, go out in the woods, you know, give your gear a try. Don't give Quick Clot a try unless you unless you have to. I don't recommend that one.
Well, it's like your water purification, you know, a lot of different things like that. It's definitely important. We have a little group that was prepper group, and we do a lot of things. And it was funny, a lot of the people, they're buying all this stuff, and then when we went out to the field to use it, it's right, I mean, they couldn't. And they were pulling stuff out of packages, you know. I was like, you know, come on.
I can't tell you how many trips I've been on where somebody's going backpacking, not necessarily for the first time, but they're using gear for the first time. So they pull, you know, the tent out of the cellophane package, you know, mintly wrapped, and, you know, they start setting it up and they don't know how to do it, and they break a pole. You know, stuff like that. Like, go and use the stuff. Make sure you know how to use your gear before you're 15 miles into the woods. So try this stuff out. Make sure you know how to use it before you go on a trip.
Also, don't borrow out of your kits. You know, once you get a good kit set up, don't borrow out of it.
I know we're both really bad about
that. You know, and I'm not as bad as I used to, because I just finally said, I'm going to just set this up. I don't touch it. But yeah, duct tape. Of course, you can reuse the duct tape. So, but yeah, make sure that when you do put a survival kit, now that's difficult to do, especially if you're trying to use it out of there. But I just highly recommend get you a survival kit set up and leave it alone. You can check on it once in a while, but you pull out there. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten somewhere and I went to pull out something and it's just like, where is it? And I think, So, but in a survival situation, that's not forgiving. So.
In addition to that, if you have stuff that expires, make sure you replace it. So medications and some of the first aid stuff expires. Some fire starters have a shelf life, so make sure if that stuff expires, you replace it. Don't leave it in there forever. The next thing we have on there is insulation. We're not going to talk about it in this kit because that's one of those things that you just tailor appropriate to the trip. The next thing on here is illumination. And I actually don't have any illumination in my kit. And the reason is I always have a flashlight on me. If I don't have a flashlight on me, something has gone so terribly wrong that me not having a kit is the least of my worries. Anybody that knows me, anybody that's seen it in my videos, I always have at least one flashlight on me. So I use that
as in your pocket.
That's right.
What light's in your pocket?
I have an Olight S1 in my pocket and a Mech Army Illuminex. And my cell phone has a light on it. I probably got something else in here somewhere too. But, I always have at least one light on me. If you don't do that, illumination is really, really important because it gets dark everywhere eventually. So being at night, trying to navigate around in the woods in a dark environment when it's cloudy out there is tough. If you've never done that, it's kind of fun to do. It's just kind of interesting. And I recommend doing it when you're not in a bad survival situation for the first time. Go see what it's like when it's really dark out and you truly don't have any illumination. Go try to navigate around in the woods. It's hard.
I'll give you an example. One time we were traveling up to the mountains of western North Carolina outside of Brevard, and this guy's car broke down. And so what we ended up doing is there was a checkbook in the glove box. And so we were out in the middle of nowhere. And so took it, started ripping checks and lighting them just to see as we went down this path, because there was this huge canopy down this road and then there was the river right beside us. So we didn't know if it was going to be like snakes or whatever, and you could not, it was completely black. And by the time we got to the end of the road where it opened up to the field, we were able to see, but we had no flashlight or anything. So, that's definitely, and then one time we were up at the Blue Ridge Parkway up in the graveyard fields, and we got there really late. So we start, and all of a sudden we realize we didn't have a flashlight. We all have our camping gear and everything, and we're going. So we just take off, and you're talking about crazy. You couldn't, and there's a lot of canopies there too as well, until we got down to the bottom. So light is super important. But light also, which is really probably even, just as important, is that it's a security tool. And having a good flashlight, is really important in a security situation. In fact, there's been studies, and not necessarily a light this size, but a little bit larger light. These are used in self-defense more than about any other tool. So a good flashlight is a good self-defense option, plus it does illuminate. And I have two different things of light in my kit. So
I have three on me, okay? I am my kit.
He's a weapon.
Yeah. You're talking about lighting checkbooks. That's the classic horror movie trope, is the guy walking around with the matchbook and lighting a single match at a time. Imagine if in the horror movies the dude just had a flashlight. It wouldn't be a very scary movie at that
survived.
point. Yeah. Another thing we're talking about lighting, another thing that I throw in every one of my bags is a good headlamp. And something when we're talking about anything battery operated, I try to keep all my batteries the same. So all the stuff I have in my kits, I use CR123s for. And in the lights themselves, I usually have rechargeable ones just so I don't have to keep on feeding it CR123s. But in my kit, I'll keep spare batteries. So I'll keep a couple spare CR123s in there, because when it can and does die, I'll have a spare to be able to keep it powered. So headlamps, another thing I throw in there every bag just as my first thing. And it can be something as simple. We have $8 headlamps. Just get something cheap, throw it in there, and even just have the basics. It's really nice to be able to use both your hands without having to keep something in your mouth or tuck behind your hat or something like that. So I really like a headlamp for lighting as well. Next thing on here, repair kit and tools. So this is a big old topic. This is kind of like lighting and fire starting for us. Repair kit and tools probably covers half of the stuff that's in here for me personally, because that's kind of a lot of different things. You know, when we talk about tools, and you're talking about things like Swiss Army knives or knives, or you know, multi-tools or anything like that you have that you're using as a knife or a saw. That covers a whole lot of things. And one of my favorite things is the A-Lock series from Swiss Army Knives, Victorinox. I really like the Farmer because you've got the blade, and also really important, you've got the saw. And I don't know if you probably can't see this on video, but I can show him. It's pretty gunked up. I've actually used this quite a few times, and it works really, really well. So I like to have a nice saw in there, and then, you know, you've got a bottle opener for all those bottle opening emergencies. So I like to have a nice Swiss Army knife, and then I also like to have something with some scissors on it, because sometimes cutting small line or something like that, or doing some first aid things, is kind of tough to do with a knife. So I like to have scissors, and this is the SOG crosscut, which also has some tweezers on there, which I like to have for first aid, pulling out splinters, again pulling out ticks. I've used this quite a few times to pull ticks out. So I keep a couple things. I keep the Swiss Army knife Farmer, and then I keep the SOG crosscut in my kit as far as tools.
Yeah, I have a little smaller Swiss Army knife with a lot of the little pick and
the classic.
Yeah, the classic here, and then a little bit of a larger knife, the Benchmade Barrage, which I do switch this out sometimes because I just really love carrying that knife. It's so fast.
It's your second one, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes, it is. My first one got stolen.
Yep.
And then, but the ZT is my. But that's another thing too, is you're keeping a lot of these items on you. You know, a good knife. One story that I like to always tell, and in fact, I told it last year here, but I'm going to tell it again. You know, I have a good friend of mine that was with his cousins when he was a young kid, and his cousins were a little bit older than him, and they were playing and running around, and they got him up in a tree, and they tied him up to the tree. And he was hanging there, and they left him. Well, he started trying to get out, and when he did, he accidentally got caught, and the rope got caught around his neck, and he was choking, and he couldn't get out. He just happened to have a pocket knife, and he was able to cut the rope. And you know, he told me that day, he said, "I will never be without a pocket knife, because you never know what can happen." So I want to encourage you guys. The knife is one of those tools that I mean, it's been really from the beginning. They started forming knives from the beginning, and it's the most important tool that you can have. You can do a lot of things with it, and you know, if you're not careful, you go out and buy a really nice, expensive knife. This is not a cheap knife here, and the ZT is definitely not. But I used to take this out, and I would have a spare knife that I would use to actually do things with. It was just for show. And one time I was down in the woods, and I just realized this was the only knife I had, and I just said, "Oh well." And so I just, you know, I forgot what I was doing. I think I was digging a trench or something. But
with a knife?
No, I'm just playing. Man. But anyway, I was doing something with it, you know, and it was pretty rugged on the knife. And when I finished, I cleaned it up, and I looked at it, and I went, it looks just like it did when I pulled it out. So a really good knife, you know, will hold up. But what's more important than, you know, having a knife that you can depend on? And so don't be too cheap on a good knife. I mean, there's some decent quality knives that are inexpensive, but make sure you get a good, solid knife, because your life can depend on this. Not just for, well, it can be for self-defense if you need it, but for a lot of other tasks.
Another thing I always have in all my packs is I throw in a decent fixed blade. And this is a little over the top as far as fixed blades go. I'll totally admit that. It has glow in the dark on it, and you know, our flame logo. You can get something a lot simpler, even like the $20, $15 Moras. Take those, throw them in your packs. The SEs are good, reasonably priced, about $100. A nice fixed blade, because they're so durable and they can handle so much abuse. You can do batoning. If you're not familiar with batoning, it's basically splitting a piece of wood in two with a knife. And that's something in Georgia that I find myself doing a lot, because it rains a lot here. If you're down by making a fire or something like that down by a creek where it's just constantly wet, sometimes it's hard to find dry wood. I had a buddy of mine that moved out from the desert Southwest, and he's always talking about how, you know, he sees people having trouble starting fires. He's like, "I've never had trouble starting fires in my life." until he moved to Georgia. And he's like, it's always wet here. I'm like, yeah, it's always wet here. So a good fixed blade is nice to be able to do a lot of different things. So a good fixed blade is also something that I throw in all of my packs.
Yeah, I agree. A good fixed blade is important to have, and especially one with a full tang and good metal. You know, just like I was talking about this little SE Azula, this knife, you know, you look at it and you're like, wow, that's dirty. You look at
blood.
It may be. Could be me. Probably my blood. Probably is. That may be from my finger. I don't know that I cleaned it now that I think about it. I don't think so. Anyway, this, you know, it looks really small, but the quality of the steel is really excellent, and that's really important. It doesn't dull as quick. And again, I cut a 4x4 with this in its own video, where I just went and started cutting it and went right through it. And then, of course, I think I've had it resharpened. Yeah, then I had it resharpened and cut my finger. But anyway, don't be too cheap on your knives. There's a lot of cheap, I know you want to defend it, but a lot of cheap Chinese stuff out there over the past few years. They've gotten better. They have gotten much better.
There's a lot of cheap stuff from everywhere, honestly.
But except for America now. Watch out.
So America only makes quality stuff.
That's right.
We do make a lot of good stuff.
We do make junk sometimes.
Yeah. Some of the other stuff that I like to have in there as far as repair is just basic. Actually took this, I have, GearPods also makes fully featured kits. So if you don't want to build one yourself, they have ones with really nice components. So they have, you know, like tarp tents and survival blankets, and I actually scavenged this from one of the other kits that I got from them. And it has some repair items. It has safety pins, needles, fishing hooks, and then some other fishing stuff. And I really like to have that just for, you know, I don't know if I've ever been in a situation where I've been, you know, so emergency set that I had to go catch a fish, but just in case, I have that. But also for repairing things, it's nice to have the sewing needles and safety pins and things like that to be able to repair stuff. And also having the line to go with that. I've also got some snare wire in there. And then I kind of showed this before, but wrapped around the GearPods itself, I have a couple kinds of fishing line. I have a braided fishing line, I have a monofilament, and then I have a whole bunch of duct tape. I mean, this is like not quite a whole roll, but it's you know, probably a good 30-40 feet of duct tape wrapped around here. And I find, well, I'm sure we all find duct tape very, very useful. And super glue too. I keep a little tube of super glue in there, and not even just in emergency situations, I found myself using all of those things for little little repair tasks, and you know, fixing my bag or something like that. I find that kind of stuff really, really useful.
You know, the one thing that a lot of times when people that think about survival in the larger sense is, you know, it's just the end of the world, it's this, but an SHTF can happen to you anytime, and it can be your personal SHTF, which means for stuff hits the fan, for those of you who are wondering. But it's, you know, it's, well, I'm trying to be nice. But seriously, anything, a survival situation can happen anytime, and it could be just you. So having the right gear with you is just important. Doesn't necessarily mean that The Walking Dead is around the corner, which, you know,
well, sometimes it is around the corner, sort of.
Well, honestly, it probably, yeah, it is around the corner, but the actual event. So, you know, always be prepared. It doesn't take a whole lot to do it. One thing too is I just wanted to kind of touch on is to have some kind of battery backup system for your phone. I even have one for my, I can use this with my GoPros and things like that. So I use this all the time. These are just great to have, especially because we rely on phones so much.
The next thing they had on there was nutrition, and I don't keep any of that in my kit. You know, I guess you could talk about I have some stuff in here to be able to catch food if I was really in that situation. But food is another thing, like clothing and insulation, that I tailor to the individual trip. In my larger bags, I have stuff like this, the emergency bars, just super dense. Have you ever eaten any of these?
Yes, they're good.
Really?
Yes, they're really good.
Try
In
some of
fact,
those.
I opened up one of these one time, and I was just going to test it, and I ended up eating the whole bar. And I think it's like
12,000 calories.
16,000 calories. I mean, I was laughing about it on video, but I was sitting there going, man, that's pretty good. It's like graham cracker and
it's like
lemon
super,
or
super
something.
dense cookie.
Oh, it's good. In fact, I'm getting kind of hungry. I don't know.
Bust it out.
No, it is good.
So nutrition is really important just for, again, morale and energy levels. Keeping that up, keeping your blood sugar up is really important. So tailor that to the trip that you're going on. Not necessarily something you need to keep in a compact kit. Last thing they have on there is emergency shelter. So emergency shelter is something that's important, and Don touched on that with his space blanket, and I have one as well. So a compact little one. That's something that I also usually keep a larger version of, just in case. And I've actually had to use these before. I've been caught in hailstorms where you don't really have any shelter and you've got golf ball size hail coming down. It's not really something you want to get knocked in the head with. So being able to get yourself under cover when you don't really have any other protection is really important. And also the warmth aspect of that. We talked kind of earlier about being stuck on the road in a snowstorm. Well, imagine if you're not in a suburban or urban environment. You don't really have a building or somebody's house to go knock on the door of, or even your own vehicle to go in. Having a way to keep yourself warm and sheltered is really, really important. So, something super basic. I like to keep something a little bit more, like the skate bib is really nice.
One thing that's kind of outside of that's really easy to have are these heavy meal trash bags. And you can go to like Home Depot. It's the industrial. It's the strongest.
Contractor bags.
Yeah, contractor bags. And in fact, there was a recent one of the really famous survivalist, and I read the article, but I can't remember the guy's name. But it said that he said if you had one thing that you could have in an emergency situation, what would it be? And he said one of these bags.
I know Dave Canterbury says that a lot.
Yeah, but it wasn't Dave because I know Dave. But it was somebody. But Dave's definitely a good reference for that.
I think knife is number one for him.
Yeah, knife would be. But this is just, there's so many different things you can do with this. You can use it for shelter. You can wrap up with it. You can keep the rain off. You can use it as a container. I mean, you can strip it and use it for even slight cordage. So and these are, you can buy a big box of them. They're a lot more expensive than the standard, Glad bags. Don't buy those. Get some good heavy meal.
But they're still pretty cheap.
They're very cheap.
I mean, a box
you can split them up.
Yeah, $15. Where a lot of the stuff we're talking about. We're talking about a lot of high-end things because obviously I own a business and Don does a lot of this stuff for a living. So we have some pretty nice stuff. You don't necessarily have to start out with this super high-end expensive stuff. There's a lot of solutions on the market. Like, we talked about the Survival Medic, the GearPods pre-built kits. There's a lot of things that you can do on a budget just to start out or even to build multiple kits. So if you want to have a kit in every bag or have them in your vehicles or have them in your house, you can do them inexpensively and spread them out.
Right, that's right. But do it. I have a buddy of mine. In fact, we used to laugh about this years ago. We'd always have all this stuff in this big container. But if anything ever happened, it'd take you 20 minutes just to sort through it to see what you need. Go ahead and get it organized. And
don't touch it.
Don't touch it. Don't touch it. No, it's true. Don't touch it. But go ahead and get it organized and get it set up, and you have it right there for you when you need it. Even FEMA says you need some kind of survival kit with you at home and on the road. So
we've actually been working with some of the local agencies to do more kinds of classes like these in the community and do things at the Smyrna festivals just to teach people how to do that, because you're exactly right. I mean, if your power goes out, even basic things like having water to take care of yourself in your home or a way to get water, or having a lantern. A lot of people don't even have a way to have light in their house if the power goes out. We have a lot of people that'll come in here because there's some storm coming in and they're like, I don't have a flashlight. Like, you don't have a flashlight? How is that possible? But even a basic flashlight that you can stick on a counter to light up a room, that stuff's important because this stuff happens.
Right, it does. And that you become less of a burden on their resources when you can take care of yourself.
Right.
You don't want to be the victim, because then you're adding to the problem. It's like a good friend of mine said. He goes, the better my neighbor's prepared, the better I'm prepared. So the more people that are prepared around you, the better you're prepared, and more of an answer to the problem, not the problem.
So there you go. That's building a compact survival kit. Big thanks again to the vendors. thank you all for coming out. And if you want to see this video, we'll have it up on YouTube in the next couple days.
Yes, we will.
Keep it going. Does anybody have any questions about any of this stuff?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
Say you have a group of preppers, like what you alluded to earlier. Would you rather have everybody have one of every item in the pack, or could you separate the loadout against multiple people if you know they're going to be there?
No.
No?
No. And the reason why, it's just like with a kid, with a small child, the tendency is to carry everything with you, but you can be separated. I mean, and you can say, you can be separated. And at Disney World, I saw where a mother was sitting at a thing and a child was on one side just playing in this court, and then the ride opened up and everybody poured through, and there was probably 200 people all of a sudden in between her and that child, and there was nothing she could do. So, and that's in and of course the child was there when it went by. But you know, in the woods, you're traveling, something could happen. And so then if that's just with a child, an adult for sure as well, you can get separated, things can happen. So, which, you know, that seems like it would be cool to do, but that for that very reason. For children though, what I would recommend, and of course age, you know, plays a factor, is to have just certain items for them. Because even if at least it gives them some chance if they do get separated.
So. That's actually a really common situation. If you watch any of the survival shows or you read any of the stories about people getting trapped on mountains, is because people got separated from each other and the other guy had the things that they needed, and that sounds like a pretty bad situation. So, you know, everybody at least have the basics, at least have, you know, something super basic, throw it in your pack and at least have that.
Well, and then another situation that's kind of related to that a little bit, there was a plane that went down in Alaska, true story, where the pilot always kept a survival kit in his plane. He was a bush pilot, so he kept it in there. Well, when the plane crashed, his buddy broke his leg or whatever and got pinned, and so the plane caught on fire, and he was trying to get his friend out. He barely got him out before the plane went up, but his survival kit was sitting in the plane. So they lost everything. They were out. In fact, it was days and days. They couldn't get any cell phone coverage. He used his shoe to drink water. I mean, you know, to get water, and he just did whatever. It was a really rough situation. They finally got him. But now what he does is he puts it actually on a vest when he flies, and he keeps everything on him. So, you know, and not that you're not going to walk around with a survival vest on here in Atlanta, but, you know, if you do, that's fine. But, you know, keeping some things, that's your EDC. That's one of the things about it. Your light, your stuff, keeping a few things on you that you could need. So,
anybody else got any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you pack your guns in there?
Yeah. In fact, right here, and of course, since I'm from South Carolina and we are in Georgia, I can't show, you know, my concealed carry. But that would be one place to carry it. One thing you need to be careful of is if you're leaving it in a vehicle, in your bag in a vehicle, you know, it can get stolen. You know, like for me, and you know, my truck got stolen last year, so it didn't matter. But the thing is, and there are some ways. In fact, I did a video about a mesh net that'll go over your bag, which I would definitely, if you're going to leave your bag and you're prone to have some, you know, issues, is you can take that mesh bag and put it around it and lock it to the seat.
It's like a steel
frame.
mesh, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's a great way to be able to secure your bag. But but also with concealed carry, I keep one on me. So, but you know, of course I always have, you know, Marshall has flashlights, I do that with guns. So I have 3 or 4.
Any other questions? All right, guys, thanks again. We'll keep this stuff up here if anybody wants to take a look at anything.